So if we rewind into Joanna's past, I have never been good with a metronome. Using a metronome was very aggravating. The constant beats, they would kind of get into my head. I just felt like my whole head was ringing. For those of you who know what I mean. How many of you do you feel your eardrums literally going like this? That's me literally right now. But I think the most frustrating thing was not being able to line up with it, not being able to predict when the next beat came down. Now, the thing is, some people are great at this. This, to some people, comes completely naturally, and they almost can't play something in time if they don't have a metronome clicking in their head, either through an earpiece connected to their metronome or if they're just like imagining it. When I became a teacher, I tried to come up with a bunch of different ways to teach my students to have that internal beat in them, because I did manage to create an internal beat for myself, but I'm not actually 100% sure how I did it. I learned to be in sync with other people, but if I was being completely honest with myself, I still, even as a teacher, could not 100% match myself with a metronome purely by ear. I just can't do it. And you know, like the metronomes, typically they have sort of a flashing beat going with it. And I just can never predict when the next flash is going to be, even though it is the most regular thing in the world. I mean, that's what a metronome is for, is to keep a regular beat. There's just something about it that I can't predict. Like, I can't see it. It's pretty obvious when I say it out loud what I should have been doing. I hate to keep repeating this, but all of my revelations right now are happening on Twitch. I'm not trying to push for Twitch like crazy. So it was on Twitch during one of my live stream practice sessions where I randomly discovered something about how I relate to metronomes. I use this metronome. It's just random. I just went on Google Play Store and just like downloaded it. Didn't really read that many reviews. I just needed a metronome to teach with. It's a pretty typical metronome. You can tap the beat of any beat that you want and figure out how fast that is. You can choose how many beats there are per bar, how many clicks there are per beat, so like subdivision and stuff like that. It's called Metronome Beats. I think I have the pro version. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just use them because they're convenient. I felt that I could not responsibly live stream a practice session, you know, especially when you're working on technique, without using a metronome. So I was like, okay, let's just use a metronome. I used this metronome and I had it clicking so that the microphone can pick it up. We're gonna mute this because I cannot stand the beating. I discovered that I was not paying attention to the sound of the beats. I was only looking at the ball going back and forth, because this to me resembles a conductor. You can actually visually see, I can't look at this because there might be a little bit of a lag. As long as I'm looking at it, I am fully in sync. I actually tested this out with two of my students. These two students that I demonstrated this to, they are like me. They're very, very sight-based. So they also cannot work with metronomes to save their lives. Like, they cannot predict when the next beat comes down. However, they have absolutely no problem following the conductor when they're in band rehearsals. If you are similar, see if this is the case, that maybe you need a visual metronome instead of like an audio metronome. I know for a fact I confused a lot of people. I would be asked to work with a metronome and it would either do nothing for my playing or it would make my playing worse because I'm constantly trying to predict when the next beat is coming down. So what I ended up doing was practicing playing with the metronome rather than using the metronome as a tool to practice the music I was working on. So I wasn't actually accomplishing any practice with the music itself. The music itself wasn't getting any better at all. You have to essentially ask yourself if you are sight-based or if you are ear-based. You have to liken yourself to a deaf musician or a blind musician. With me being so sight-based, I would operate better as a deaf musician. And you can't ask a deaf musician to work with an audio metronome. Obviously, if you're working with a deaf musician, you would use a visual metronome or someone conducting them. On the flip side, if you were to work with a blind musician, if they're not following a conductor, would it make any sense to be like, can't you see it? Can't you see the beat? No, they can't see the beat. because they're blind. It's in the same way as telling a sight-based person, can't you hear it? No, we can't hear it. You know, when I say blind and deaf, I am making it extreme so that you can get my point here. What I would liken my hearing to is like blurred hearing. It's like I need glasses for my ears, or it's like maybe I'm like colorblind for my ears. I can still hear everything properly. It's like how colorblind people can see, but then they can't distinguish colors from each other. That's my ear. Learning this about myself, that I need a visual metronome, has sort of just opened up my understanding of both people who work like me and people who are opposite of me. I now understand why people get addicted to working with a metronome. I did not understand that at first. I have students who enjoy working with a metronome. They feel like it grounds them, that it like gives them something to hang on to. Whereas for me, if I'm only listening to a metronome, I just feel like I'm like clawing at it, like I can't get it. But now that I have a visual metronome, I get it. I do feel grounded. Instead of taking 90% of my energy to even just line myself up with the metronome, now it's only taking like 10% of my energy, and 90% of my energy can now be spent on actually getting better at the music and at the exercises that I'm working on. It's fantastic. I think this is how all of my very ear-based friends hear the metronome. I think to them, using a metronome only takes up about 10% of your energy. Now I understand. This was a huge discovery for me, and it's opened up the way that I even teach as well. I hope this was helpful for you, or at the very least, insightful. If you want to hang out during the week, yeah, I'm on Twitch. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next week.